Alright, next we're going to clean it up. Okay, next step is going to be primering this area, and you have to put primer over all the spots that are either Bondo or bare metal. You need to use self-etching primer or etching primer for the bare metal, and you can use 2K or high build primer over these areas where if you have Bondo. But you have to put primer over Bondo or bare metal, otherwise if you put your base coat over bare metal, moisture is going to get to it and you're going to have a rust problem. And if you put base coat over Bondo, it's just going to bleed through and it's going to be a horrible paint job. Okay, but before we do that, we need to use some wax and grease remover and clean this area. Next we're going to tape around these areas, and we're going to use some high build primer to go over to primer those that area. Okay, what I like to do is just put some tape and peel it back. Just encircle the area, and then put some masking paper on these tapes, and that's it. Alright, here's a look at the primer that I'm going to use, high build primer surfacer. It's good for getting rid of small imperfections and going over your Bondo. Word of caution, you do not want to use these that sell at AutoZone and O'Reilly's or whatever when dealing with base coat, clear coat. These are not compatible. It's very important. I believe these are lacquer based primers, and they will bleed through your paint and ruin a paint job. And I made the mistake of using these when I first started painting panels, and it took me a while to figure it out. It took me a couple panels actually to figure it out. I thought I wasn't letting it dry long enough, but it's just this is not compatible with this kind of paint. So you want to, whenever you go to pick up your paint and clear coat at the same shop, it's best to buy the primer that they're selling, because they know what's compatible with the paint, and they'll sell you the right paint. Okay, so make sure you shake this well, and then just gonna show you how to apply primer. You want to go not too wet, you want to go light at first and then build it up. You want to do about 3 or 4 coats, waiting about 5 minutes between each coat. Okay. Alright, so by going light, I mean going quick over this, and the slower you go, the heavier it's gonna go. You can practice on your masking paper. So also, and the color you want to choose, you want to be obviously lighter for, if you have a lighter colored car. If you have like black, you want to use black primer. You got a red car, use red, and these usually actually come in 2 or 3 colors depending on where you go buy your stuff. This is silver and or gray, and this should go just be fine for what we're doing for this car. Okay, so yeah, practice if you need to, and then do a light coat. So this is spattering it a little bit, but it's primer. We'll be able to sand it off later. I'm just gonna let that sit for 5 minutes and then get another coat on there. Time for a second coat. You can start going a little heavier. Alright, okay, time for a third coat. Okay, actually this thing is looking good. I don't think I have to sand and re-primer it. I think this is good. So I'm just, for good measure, I'm going to apply one last coat, and then I'll let it sit for 30 minutes, then we're going to sand it. Okay. Okay, so it's been 30 minutes, so now we're going to take off our masking tape and masking paper. Okay, so next what we're gonna do is, actually I said I'm gonna use 220 sandpaper and sand it down and then reapply primer. But this looks good. Another thing, when applying primer, it gives you a uniform surface and then you can pick up slight imperfections. The only things I can really pick up is this the gouge that was in here. That's gonna be really hard to get out. And then there's the smallest of pinholes here. But I think when I sand it down with this, it should go away. And I'm going to be doing wet sanding, which is basically using sandpaper and some water. I'm going to be using a softer pad, which is a little bit flexible. It's not going to dig through your primer, which basically you want to get a smooth finish. You want to get rid of all these edges and get a smooth finish on your primer. See, right now it feels kind of coarse. You want it all the way to all of it to feel smooth to your touch. Just dip this in your very clean bucket of water. Make sure there's no dust, there's no nothing, no contaminants in the water, otherwise you're gonna scratch it up. And then basically just start sanding. You don't really have to go deep, but you definitely want to get rid of all the edges. Otherwise they will show through the paint. Especially since we did about 4 coats of primer. It's it's gonna stand out. So keep that in mind. Alright. I'm gonna wipe it all down and see what we got. Alright, I sanded it too much and it went through here a little bit. That plastic is showing, and just very minor amount of Bondo is also showing as well. But the rest of it looks pretty good. So yeah, you know what? Actually, we're gonna have to reapply some primer here, and also I'm gonna apply some primer here as well. Okay, whenever doing these little touch-ups with primer, instead of masking the area and then leaving a hole there, you just use a piece of cardboard, preferably bigger than this, but this is all I have right now. And I just hold it over the area. That. Same thing here. Just wait 5 minutes and do our 3 or 4 coats. Then wait 30 minutes and then sand it down. Okay, so after these have dried, now it's time to sand these. Just gonna go very lightly over these. We don't want to go through them again. We just want to get a smooth finish. That's what we're after. Also no edges. And by that I mean no edges that you can either feel with anything you feel is you have to sand it down. You can't feel any imperfections because your base coat is not going to kind of cover anything. Anything you feel or see, you need to get it to smooth out, because after primer nothing is going to cover that. The only thing the base coat will cover is this 400 grit scratches that you're getting on these. So yeah, it's something to keep in mind. Okay, besides these 2 little areas here, everything else is pretty smooth. So yeah, just gonna sand these down a little bit more, and I think we should be all set. Okay, so finally we're able to get these edges to smooth out, and we want to do one last check. Go over all around the circumference, making sure all the other sanding areas that you haven't gone over with your 400 grit, you go over them and smooth them out. Otherwise they're going to show in your final paint. Like this edge here, I don't think I went over it with this 400 grit, so just gonna go over them one more time. Because base coat is what's gonna go over your 400 grit, and it's gonna cover all these scratches. But you need to smooth out all the other ones so they don't show after your final application of base coat. Okay, so next step is to wet sand the panels that you're gonna be painting and blending into, because you know, your clear coat is not gonna stick if you don't wet sand the rest of the areas that you're not gonna be putting base coat. Besides that area right there. So we're gonna be putting wet sanding 1500 with a 1500 grit sandpaper, this door and this door. As you remember, we're going to paint that and then blend it into this door all the way up here, because the previous whoever painted this last, they didn't blend it into this door, so you can actually tell the difference. But since I got that scratch here, we're going to blend the whole thing. We're going to blend it all the way down and into this door, and probably all the way to here with our base coat. Then we're going to go with clear coat from that edge to this edge. So for the clear coat to stick, these two, the whole thing, both these doors need to be entirely wet sanded with 1500 grit. Oh, and when you're going to be wet sanding these doors with the 1500 grit sandpaper, you want to get all these edges and underneath there as much as possible, all around the door handle. Basically, that's what's gonna, you know, make your paint job last. Because if you don't do these edges and under here and around this door edges and the front, that's where it's gonna start peeling after a while. So, you know, you just want to get scratch them up with your sandpaper so the clear coat sticks. Okay. Oh, and then just to be on the clear, you don't go with 1500 grit over that. You use 1500 grit for everything, but the area you have 400 grit. Okay. Okay, so what I like to do first is actually get all the edges over and done with, so that way I can just concentrate on the panel. Alright, next you want to get some paper towels, start cleaning this off. Actually, I'm going to do the rest of this video probably tomorrow during the day, because we need to wash this off thoroughly and then check for spots that we missed, because you need to sand down all these areas. If there's any shiny areas, which means they haven't been sanded down, the areas you sand down are going to be dull, and you want both panels to be like that. So yeah, just gonna wipe this down a little bit, but the rest of this video will continue tomorrow.